Now let's look at the sign rules for multiplying and dividing real numbers. This is a little bit different. For multiplication and division, we really just have to count the negative signs. If we have an even number of negative signs, we're going to have a positive answer. If we have an odd number, we're going to have a negative answer. Remember, this is only when we are multiplying or dividing. For example, number 1, we have a negative 8 times a positive 5. Well, we have one negative, which is an odd number of negatives, negative answer. 8 times 5 is 40. It would be a negative 40. Number 2, we've got negative 6 times negative 11. Two signs, two negatives, make a positive answer. Even number of negatives, positive answer. So 6 times 11 is, of course, 66. Since the two negatives make a positive, it's a positive 66. Now, example number 3, we can figure out whether it's positive or negative before we do the multiplication. We see a negative times a negative, we know it's going to be positive. I'm going to put down positive and circle it so that I remember that. Then I remember I have to multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator to get my answer. So it would be a positive 1 over 24. Now, I want you to look next at what we have to do when we say we need a reciprocal or a multiplicative inverse. That is a number that we would multiply by. We would use it to multiply to get to or to equal the number 1. To get or equal 1. So what number, in example 4, do I need to multiply times 100 if I wanted to get the number 1? Usually we're going to have to multiply by a fraction. So let's go ahead and put 100 over 1. And then let's say, what fraction would I multiply 100 by to get it to cancel everything except for everything would go down to a 1? In other words, it would all cross-reduce. Well, it's easy. It's the opposite of whatever it was. It would be 1 over 100 would be my reciprocal. Example 5 is exactly the same way. I'm going to put my negative 8 over a 1, and then I'm going to say, what am I going to multiply by? What fraction to make a negative 8 become a 1? Well, I'm going to do the opposite. I'll put the negative 8 in the denominator, the 1 in the numerator, and it would be a negative 1/8. Is that right? Yes, because a negative times a negative would give me a positive, and I want it to become a positive 1. What about number 6? What fraction do I multiply 2/3 by to get it to become 1? Well, remember, cross-reducing is what I really want to do. I just have to put opposite numbers down so they would eventually cross-reduce, and I would have 1, so it would be the opposite. It would be 3 over 2. For 7 through 12 on this page, all we're asked to do is really simplify these numbers. So what I want to do is say, what for number 7 is 20 divided by a negative 10? Well, go back to your sign rules. Multiplying, dividing, even number of negatives, positive answer. Odd number of negatives, negative answer. I have one negative. 20 divided by 10 is 2. Since there's one negative, it would be a negative 2. Now, 8 and 9 are rules we need to make sure we know. Dividing by 0 or dividing into 0 give us two different answers. For 8, we have 0 divided by negative 9. Now, normally we would say that's a negative answer, but since the number is 0, it's either going to be a 0 for an answer or an undefined. What you have to remember is that it is okay to divide by 0. Now look, beside the 0, I'm just writing the letter O. And then I'm using the K to represent the number. It's okay, therefore the answer is 0. Example 9 is a different example or a different form. It's negative 5 divided by 0. Now, I'm going to take, and beside the 0, I'm going to write the letter O, but this one is not going to form the word okay. I'm going to put an N beside my number. What it says is no, I cannot divide by 0. In other words, I want you to check every time you have 0 in a division problem. Ask yourself this question. Is it okay to divide or is it not okay? Is it a no? Is it an okay or is it a no is what you ask yourself. Write an O beside the 0 and then you form a word, either no or okay, with a K and N beside the number. Now when it's a no, like it is in negative 5 divided by 0, what we say the answer is undefined. Example 10, we've got some exponents that we need to evaluate before we do this addition. So I'm going to just say 6 plus, and what it's asking me to raise to the exponent is the negative 2. Now it's asking me to say negative 2 times negative 2. In other words, multiply two negatives together. The reason I know that is the negative is included inside the parentheses. The exponent is outside the parentheses. That tells me everything inside those parentheses is raised to that exponent. Well, a negative times a negative, even number, is going to be a positive 4. So I've got 6 plus 4 as my numerator. In my denominator, 4 minus 9, I have to use the other rules. I have to subtract them and keep the sign of the larger one, because that was subtraction, not multiplication. Now I can add my numerator. I end up with 10 over a negative 5. And now I'm going to divide. My division rules, odd number of negatives, negative answer. 11 has a bunch of absolute value that we need to resolve, so we have to handle the operations inside absolute value first. So let's just write the absolute value sign down and say negative 3 plus 6. That's going to give me absolute value of 3 plus the second one, absolute value of negative 2 plus 7. Well, negative 2 plus 7 is going to give me a positive 5. And in the bottom, my denominator, I'm going to say absolute value of negative 2 times 2, which is a negative 4. Now that we have just one term inside absolute value, we can resolve them. This would give us 3 plus 5 over 4, which is really 8 over 4, or 8 divided by 4, the whole number 2. Example 12, once again, they're asking us to substitute in a negative number. We have to be really careful. We might end up with two negatives together. This time, we're substituting in negative 5 for x when x is squared. Well, let's be careful and put our negative inside parentheses, because we are squaring that negative. Negative 5 squared minus 2 times, and this is another negative number I'm substituting in. For y, negative 3, and that y is squared, so the negative is a part of y. It's going to also be squared. To resolve this, I'm going to say negative 5 times negative 5. Two negatives make a positive, 25. And then I say minus 2, and I'm going to go ahead and do my exponent before I do this multiplication. Why? Because exponents come first in order of operations. So I say 2 times negative 3 times negative 3. Well, that's 9. A positive 9. Negative times a negative. Well, that gives me 25. Negative 2 times 9, negative 18. And the negative became the operation, didn't it? And now all I have to say is 25 minus 18 is 7.